All right, welcome, good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the Parsha Buzz program where Jewish learning and business meet. This is week 5, Parshas Shemos, Sefer Shemos, the book of Exodus, but where the actual Parsha of the week is Parshas Bo. So the first segment of tonight, we're going to be talking about this week's Torah portion, what we're going to be reading from the Torah on Saturday, and the very, very important and yes, relevant messages that are going to help us here in January 2021. It does feel good to say 2021, and I'm sure it's the same on the other side. So let's get right in this. So we're the Jewish people right now, as we read Parshas Bo, is coming off the last week's two parshas were Shemos and Va'era, and that's when the Jewish people started to witness the plagues that God bestowed upon the Egyptians. The first one was dam, was blood. The next one was frogs, and then it was dam, sfardeya, kinim, was lice, etc. So we're 7 plagues right now into the Torah, into 7 out of the 10 that we're into in Parshas Bo. We pick up by plague number 8, which is arba, which is locust. Then we get to choshech, which is darkness, and makas bechoros, which the first the Egyptian firstborn was killed. So now, very interestingly, by the plague of darkness, just to a thought. This is a little bit of a Hasidic thought, a little bit of a deeper intellectual, emotional driven idea. But when it comes to the Makkah of Choshech, the plague of darkness, the Torah says something very interesting. I'm going to quote for you. This is in Parshas Bo, and it's we're going to be, for those who don't have their stone chumash, of course, feel free to send me a text or an email later, and everyone will try to make sure everyone can get one of these if they would like to follow along with us. But in any event, we're reading now in Parshas Bo, it's page 330, 344 in the Hebrew and 345 in the English. And this is when the plague of darkness came upon the Egyptians. The Torah describes the darkness as lo ra'u ish es achiv v'lo kamu ish mitachtav shloshes yamim. No man was able to see his fellow, because that's how dark it was. And there's a Hasidic understanding, a deep emotional and intellectual understanding that not only was it dark because not only were they not able to see each other because of the darkness, but also on a homiletical level, when someone cannot see their Jewish friend, when they cannot connect and look beyond their own self, that's also a Torah definition of darkness. And of course, we're here to try to bring light to the world. We're here to try to inspire and to infuse energy and hope. And the only way that can be done is if we don't follow suit of lo ra'u, that we don't see, rather we do see each other, we do see Jews, whether we have known them before, whether we affiliated or belonged or did not belong to the same synagogue, etc. But when we're able to see each other, that's when there's light and not choshech and not darkness. That's just a very interesting thought off the bat. But getting back to the beginning of the Parsha, beginning of Parshas Bo, so something really interesting happens. Now we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our leader, is this rising star. Remember, he was saved. He was thrown into the basket, into the ocean. Pharaoh's daughter rescues Moses from the shore. He grows up in Pharaoh's house. Irony, if there ever was one. The person who decided that all the boys should be thrown into the river in his own home, or palace in this case, the leader of the Jewish people that's going to take the nation out is growing up in his own house. Okay, pretty ironic. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses is this, rising star, this leader that's coming to the Jewish people, and he's commanded by God to go to Pharaoh and to say, "Let my people go." And Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is scared to go in front of Pharaoh. Moses is scared to go because he says, "I'm kvad peh, I'm kvad lashon, I'm aras vasayim." Those Hebrew terms are referencing to Moshe having a speech impediment. Moshe Rabbeinu actually had a lisp or a stutter. He had some sort of speech impediment. He had a handicap, and he was nervous to be the one who would be representing the Jewish people in front of Pharaoh, with not being one of the best speakers and orators out there. And the commentaries explain, most notably the Rabbeinu Bachaya, the great 11th century, I think, you can fact check me later, commentary comments, the reason why the Almighty wanted Moshe, of all people, to be the leader and specifically have this speech impediment is because God wanted to instill in all of us that don't look at your own personal struggles or handicaps as a roadblock to greatness and leadership. The Torah believes that if a person has character and has content and is humble and gracious and is kind, is compassionate and comparing, etc., 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 that will break through all the barriers. A person can have a speech impediment but still go down in history as the greatest leader ever in the history of the Jewish people. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu. So Hashem commands Moshe to go in front of Pharaoh. Moshe says, are you sure I should go? I should go. Finally, he goes. And then he tells Pharaoh, if the Jewish people can't go, there's going to be this plague, that plague. They go back and forth. That's where this week's Parsha begins. Hashem commands Moshe to go in front of Pharaoh, to command him to let the Jewish people go. And Hashem, but the Torah just goes a little bit further. And that little bit further, just one verse, we're going to see how today here, January 21 of 2021, we are still living this verse of Parsha's Bo. Fascinating. So fasten your seatbelts, come along with me, let's dive right in. So Hashem, I'm going to read for you a quote. Hashem said to Moses, come to Pharaoh, for I've made his heart and the heart of his servant stubborn, right? That Pharaoh's not going to let the Jewish people go. And I want to put these signs of mine in the midst. Hashem wanted to make the miracles, the plagues, to show the greatness of God of the Jewish people in Egypt. But it goes one step further. It goes one step further. And this is what we're going to be focusing on. Verse 2. Why is this important? So the Torah says, the Torah continues, and so that you may relate in the ears of your son and in the ears of your son's son, that I made a mockery of Egypt and my signs that I placed among them, that you may know that I am Hashem, your God. So the Almighty tells Moshe the reason, the backdrop to the plagues, so that you should be able to tell your children and your children's children the mockery that I made in Egypt, which I believe is fascinating because that's exactly what we do every single year on Passover. We bring the family together by the Passover Seder, and we talk and we discuss the exodus of Egypt even to this day. And if you think about it, it's very interesting. The Torah says, so you may teach your children and your children's children. So there seems to be a focus on multi-generations. Isn't it interesting how Passover is the holiday that's most associated with grandparents and grandchildren? Isn't that interesting? By Rosh Hashanah, yeah, of course, apple and honey, but, and we try to be with family if we can, but it seems like when it comes to Passover, everyone's got these memories of Bubby and Zadie and Grandma and Grandpa. They have these memories of their grandparents. And this is not some new recent modern phenomenon. This dates back to Parsha's Bo thousands of years ago. So you may relate to your children and to your children's children. And of course, it's so important to remember, because whenever you're dealing with something so real and so true, it will never, ever go away. When something's sturdy, when something's really hard, nothing can break it. And the Jewish people's journey and our commitment to our faith and to belief in God and the story of our people is so strong that even thousands of years later, grandparents to children to grandchildren and so on and so forth. But if you think about it a little further, it seems like we go a little crazy on it. What do I mean, go a little crazy? So Judaism has this very unique relationship with leaving Egypt. Like a little obsessed, if you will. Bear with me. Where do I get this from? So I get this from the fact that we say every single day, morning and evening in the prayer, the Shema. Of course, we know Shema is when you take your hand, you go over your eyes, you go Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. the hero Israel, Hashem is our God, the Almighty is our Father, and He is one. And then there's three paragraphs that follow that. The paragraph known as Ve'ahavta, which discusses the obligation of the Jewish people to have a relationship of love towards Hashem. The second paragraph, which is known as Vehaya, which is the paragraph about the Jewish people adhering to the Torah's commandments and to the will of Hashem and the consequences, both positive and negative. And the third paragraph, which deals with the mitzvah, the commandment of tzitzit, of the garment, the four-cornered garment. And following that, there's a very interesting verse tucked away in the third paragraph of the Shema, which talks about Egypt. What is it? So I'll say it in Hebrew and translate it in English as we go along. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem your God, Asher Hotzeisi Eschem, that took Eretz Mitzrayim, that took you out of Egypt. And that's what we say. So it turns out that we mention the exodus of Egypt not just on Passover, not just once a year by the Seder with some hard matzah that's going to hurt your stomach later. We do a lot more than that. We mention the exodus of Egypt every single morning and every single evening, twice a day. We also mention the exodus of Egypt, if you think it's just during the week, and maybe on the weekends. You know, Judaism is very pro weekends off, right? We, like Shabbat, we take a day of rest, we take it easy, we chill for a little bit. We take a big step back. So maybe on Shabbat, we don't have to mention the exodus of Egypt. We got to chill from that for a moment. But that's not true. You know how I know it's not true? Because if one was to look in the text of Kiddush, right, on grape juice or wine, if you were to look at the text of what we say when it comes to that, we say that we're doing this Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim in remembrance of the exodus of Egypt. And then if someone who's making Kiddush knows how to do it well, he'll sing it in a way where it leads into Kivam Bacharta. You may have heard this before. They'll go, Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, and then everyone will chant, Kivanu Bacharta. I don't want to break your windows wherever you guys are, but the point is that it leads right into Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim. The exodus of Egypt is part of the Shema that we say, the Kiddush, the blessing on wine or grape juice that we make every single Friday night. So whether it's weekday or weekend, we're obsessed with remembering the exodus of Egypt. What is behind all of this? So I want to share with you a foundational insight. And I say foundational in cap letters, all of them, because this comes from the Ramban, or Moshe ben Nachman, not to be confused with the Rambam Maimonides. This is Nachmanides. Close. One was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. This is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. Close. They are somewhat contemporaries of each other, close to at least. And the Ramban is very famous for his commentary, both on the oral law, on the written law. And I would venture to say that what he comments on this week's Torah portion, specifically to this concept of remembering the exodus of Egypt, may be one of his most famous commentaries ever on the Torah. Foundational stuff. So bear with me. So Ramban says there are different types of people and their relationship to God. There are different types of people and how they relate to their faith. There are some people that, like us, hopefully, that we believe in Hashem, we believe in God, and that He's running the world straight. And there are those people who also they call themselves atheists. They don't believe in God. I tongue-in-cheek say they call themselves atheists because we know there are no atheists in a foxhole. But putting that aside for just a moment, right? The people, they call themselves atheists, they don't believe in God. But then says the Ramban, there's another category, and that's what we're going to have to focus on. And then we're going to answer this all up. It's going to be beautiful. Says the Ramban, there's another category of people that believe in a creator. There's a God. You think this world could just come on by itself? I mean, think about the universe for a second, right? I'm sorry if I'm causing any trauma to your fifth grade science days where if you didn't like science, but you had to sit through it, right? You remember that there's the universe and the planets and planet Earth and the continents. Okay, now we get to the countries, and then within the country, you get to the state and to the city and to the town, to the county, to the street, and to the house, and the very room that you're sitting in. You think that happened from gas and bacteria? Of course there's a God. Of course there's a creator. But the fact that the creator is still controlling and making sure that everything is happening the way that the creator wants it to, says the Ramban, there are people that believe that of course God created the world. But who said that that God is still in charge and running and orchestrating and behind the scenes? So how do you debunk that thought? You have to show that God's involved, not just by creation, but still post-creation, still involved in playing a hand and playing a role in our daily lives, a central role, a key role in our daily lives. So therefore, explains the Ramban, that's why God had to set the record straight. For all of time, in Egypt, with the plagues and then following the plagues, the splitting of the Red Sea, the Almighty needed to make an open miracle, or need to make many open miracles to set the record straight for all of time, that God did not just create the world. God did not just make this world that we're living in and enjoying. Rather, Hashem is still involved. And even a couple thousand years post-creation, Hashem is still running the world. Look at how the sea split and how the water turned into blood. And when you bit into your chocolate mousse, there turned out to be a frog, right? Hashtag Harry Potter. All right, and all the other plagues that we got onto, whether it was lice and locusts and boils and darkness, etc. So says the Ramban, that's why Hashem made the open miracle to set the record straight. But Hashem won't do open miracles for the rest of time. But yet, on the flip side, we have to remember that it's still the same God behind the scenes that's really controlling everything. Well, how do I maintain that faith that God is still running the world, but I don't see open miracles? So you know what you got to do? You got to constantly remind yourself, there's a creator in the world. There's someone who did split the sea thousands of years ago. And for the rest of time, you're going to remind yourself that. Day in, day out, morning in, morning out, weekday, weekend, holiday, Friday night, Shabbat, Passover. You're going to be reminding yourself there's still a creator who's controlling the world. And that's how we're never going to forget. And that's why says the Ramban, we constantly enforce and reinforce and reinforce this concept of Hashem taking us out of Egypt, God taking us out of Egypt, because Hashem still is watching over all of us to this very day. But why is it that God won't do open miracles in 2021? I mean, of course we say, oh my gosh, can you believe it? It's a miracle. Yeah, it's a miracle, but you can explain it with laws of nature. I'm talking about a miracle that defies the laws of nature. So the answer is, because if God would to make an open miracle today, would that be a challenge for us to believe in Hashem? Right? Hashem wants us to work hard. You know why Hashem wants us to work hard? Because if you get a freebie, the reward for a freebie is not really so rewarding. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the difference between someone who goes to work, sweats 8, 10, 12 hours, brings home a paycheck, buys himself dinner, feels good about himself. Whereas someone had to, unfortunately, go to a place where they're giving out food for those that don't have a job, right? Now, of course, we have to help them and do everything that we can. And it's not for us to judge, God forbid. But if you had to pick between the two, which one does a person feel better about himself? We feel better about ourselves when we work hard, when we sweat, when we do the heavy lifting, and then we get to reap in the rewards. It's like the difference between someone who wants to get big biceps and triceps and starts curling and pumping and lifting, doing all those things, versus someone who just injected something into them. Who feels better about their guns? The person who worked hard. So Hashem wants there to be a challenge. Hashem wants there to be a little adversity. So he has to conceal himself. Hashem has to hide behind the laws of nature. And by doing so, Hashem created this challenge where we find ourselves in this paradigm. We find this fascinating dynamic. On one hand, I can explain everything with the laws of nature. but I have to also remember that 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, I should say, we learned who is the one who's controlling nature, and that's Hashem. So we are constantly faced with this challenge where we have to keep reinforcing ourselves who's behind the scenes really. And then when we deal with this world, regular stuff in this world, we attribute it to the same God. So I heard a beautiful idea from Rabbi Lugasi. I read it in a book called Living Emunah on the weekly Parsha. Living Emunah. Emunah means faith in Hashem. I heard this beautiful idea, and with this we're going to close. So once there was a person who needed food for Shabbat, and unfortunately he got paid every other week. That's the way he got it. And when it came to of course, the first Shabbat after he got paid, he was able to get food for Shabbat, challah, candles, grape juice, all the stuff, candy for the kids, right? And then the following week, unfortunately, because it's nearing the end of the cycle, and he didn't yet get paid, the person didn't have food for Shabbat, didn't have money to buy food for Shabbat. He didn't know what to do, and he's at home. He's not sure. It's Friday morning. He doesn't know what to do. He can't go out and buy food. But someone knocks on his door, and a person says, can you please help me? I'll pay you. I need your help. I need hands. I need manpower. Can you please come to me? I'll pay you $100 if you come for me for 2 hours. Can you please do me the favor? And the person says, you're the favor for me. That's a favor. I need the money. So he's so happy. He goes. He works hard. He does the stuff. He brings him $100, runs to the store, buys the food, the chicken, the challah, the grape juice, the gefilte fish, all the stuff, all the good Jewish food, right? Loaded in carbs. And then he goes home and he enjoys it, his family. And that Friday night, the kids are like, oh my gosh, we have to be so thankful to Hashem. Look how Hashem blessed us. Look how Hashem granted us this special opportunity. The following week, he goes to work. On Friday, he gets paid. And he has all this food for Shabbat. And he's not so thankful. Says Rabbi Lugasi, that's what the Ramban's teaching us. The paycheck also came from God. Not just the miraculous knock on the door, I need you to work for me. The regular stuff, the nature, that's also Hashem. But how do I remember that's Hashem? Well, you got to remind yourself a lot. You got to remind yourself the exodus of Egypt. You got to remind yourself that Hashem took us out, and he did so in a miraculous form. And for the rest of time, morning, evening, weekday, weekend, Friday night, Shabbat, Saturday, Passover, Sukkot, remind yourself. Get obsessed with it, of course. I see that, sarcastically. But get into it. Remind yourself. Ingrain it in yourself, and you'll see the hand of God where even in the small things. You'll see the hand of God even in the minor things. And that, of course, is so relevant for us today, because it's my belief that it's not just the right thing to do. And I've said this a lot, and you heard this from me before. Please forgive me, but it bears repeating when we talk about such topics. But it's not just that it's the right thing to do to have faith in Hashem. But I also believe that it's good for us on a selfish level. The personal benefits of believing in a creator who wants the best for us. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't understand. 2020 was a year of not understanding, but we'll move on from that. I believe a person lives a more calm and relaxed life when they realize that Hashem's there. We don't understand it, but don't worry. I heard a great story. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twersky, the famous psychiatrist, who's incredible. Abraham Twersky is one of the best, if not the best, especially with his research about addiction and substance abuse. He's one of the masters, and he once said a great story about someone he knew who was a big Jets fan. Can you imagine someone's a Jets fan these days? I mean, they were almost 0-16. But this guy was a big Jets fan, right? And this is a couple years ago, and the person missed the game, and he had someone record the game for him, and he kind of wanted to jump to the answer. Did they win? Did they not win? He said, yeah, the Jets won 10-7. They won 10-7. Okay, and he said, okay, good, because I'm about to watch it, but I want to know who won it, right? So he plugs in the game, and he's watching the Jets game, and they're down 7-3. It's the second quarter or third quarter, and they ask me, are you nervous? No. I know what's going to happen already. I know they're going to win 10-7 somehow, right? I don't remember who their QB was back in the day. Was it Mark Sanchez? I don't know. Maybe we're prior to Mark Sanchez. I don't remember. I was never big on the Jets, although I had a lot of friends who were Jets fans, and they were so annoying. But nevertheless, the guy lived the rest of the game knowing that it's going to be okay. So I believe, my friends, my fellow friends, I believe that's the same idea with our lives in Judaism. If we live knowing that Hashem's controlling it, we lower the temperature a little bit. Of course, we stay focused on what our jobs are and what we're supposed to be doing, contributing to that. But we don't reach the extremes. We don't get out of control, because we remember there's a creator who's still involved in our days, and he set the record straight back then, and we remind ourselves for the rest of time. So this concludes the first part, the first segment of our Parsha Buzz program, where Jewish learning and business meet. And it's now it's a great pleasure and a great honor to welcome to this, I think this is the 5th week of our Parsha Buzz program, Adam Lewin, the CEO and owner of Hamilton Parker. And just to quickly look at the bio for a quick second, Adam leads a 3rd-generation, 85-year-old family business that was purchased for, is that $500? Wow. By his grandparents in 1934, and now generates almost $40 million in annual revenue. That's got to be one heck of a story. And we could not be more thrilled to have Adam here as we talk about creating a family atmosphere inside your business. We all know when it comes to family, right? A lot of things, the energy levels are different. And if you could use it for the positive, families thrive. And what we're going to hear tonight is, how do we take that and bring it into the office? How do we bring it into the company where we could use that energy and channel it for productivity and success for all its employees? So Adam, thank you so much for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Good evening, Rabbi. Thank you for having me. It's good to see all my family on the Zoom call and all the people I work with at Hamilton Parker. So I can't always get this crowd all together at one time. So
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Okay, so let me start off asking you, can you just please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your education, maybe a hobby or two? Please take it away.
Sure. So, grew up in Bexley. My parents, Milton and Elaine Lewin, and my 2 sisters now, Connie Tuckerman and Carrie Madison. And just lifelong Bexley, family, and Tifereth Israel was our synagogue, and went to Indiana University, graduated with a degree in economics, and then came back to Columbus to join the family business.
Okay, great.
So, and then I'll just mention that, of course, I also have my wife Stephanie, who is on this as well, and then we have 3 children. Lola, who's 12, Mila, who is 9, and Gage, who is 4.
Okay, that's beautiful. So you mentioned to me, I think it was a few weeks ago, I think it was our first Parsha Buzz program where we featured Bobby Schonstein of MI, that his dad was your godfather and mentor. So I wanted to ask you if you could please tell us a little bit about what you learned from him and what you may be doing today that you also attribute to him.
Well, I think the biggest thing that, Irving, who, of course, his kids, Bobby, Stephen, Gary, Linda, Irving and Frankie were asked to be my godparents by my parents, obviously. And, it was a product of their just friendship and relationship. But I mean, Irving and Frankie were just always a part of my life growing up. I mean, whether it was taking me for my birthday on their bus at the time, or sending me cards, always remembering my birthday. And I was thinking the other day that they did the blessing for the challah at my bar mitzvah, and they did it at our Stephanie and I's wedding as well. So I think, for me, it taught me what a godparent truly is. It's not just a figurehead or a namesake. It's someone who's actually part of that person's life.
Beautiful. Are there any other people or mentors or leaders that may have shaped you to what you think you are, how you work today?
I think, I'm a huge believer in having mentors and being willing to be a mentor. The neat thing about growing up in a family business, being at Hamilton Parker, on a Saturday morning or during the summers is, I mean, I was always, and I'm sure my sisters as well, when they were working there, is that we were just always part of adult conversations. It doesn't mean that we were participating, but we were sitting in Milton's office. He was talking to, Irving Schottenstein as an example, and many other people, and you just kind of learned and picked up things from conversations. And at the same time, even when I was 25 or 30, or now I'm 48, I mean, I have people that I look to for guidance and for perspective. My father, Milton, was by far the first and foremost mentor in my life, especially from a business standpoint. But Bobby Schottenstein was, Norman Traeger, who's from Columbus, Kurt Malkoff. These are all people that have been just huge parts of my life, and help just kind of give me perspective as I grew.
Great,
I
amazing.
think
Now,
it's a big deal.
no, amazing. So now moving along to the company. So I hear that Hamilton Parker had some very humble beginnings, and I wanted to know if you could share with us how the company got started, what the company's mission is, and if there ever was one, what was the turning point for Hamilton Parker?
Okay. Well, every quarter I meet with I'll say our new, sort of class of employees. And we have 135 employees now, but over the years, especially after my father passed away and I purchased the business, I meet with the employees, and the first thing we do is we just talk about the story of Hamilton Parker and where it started. And so, my mom and my dad have been part of the Columbus community and have many cousins, all the names that we've heard or know. And so in 1934, my grandma and grandpa borrowed $500 from I.H. Schlesinger, who was my grandmother's father, to purchase Hamilton Parker out of bankruptcy. And then it was a coal company at the time. And then my father came into the business, and he really built essentially it was a horizontal growth pattern. I mean, he basically said, we need to get out of coal, we're going to get into brick, and then we're going to add fireplaces, and then we're going to add tile, and we're going to add garage doors, because he just knew that there was only so much that you were going to be able to sell at any one house. So we always just wanted to be relevant, and he wanted something that candidly was on every house that was being built. And and then Connie and Carrie and I all spent time at Hamilton Parker. My mom worked in the tile showroom for many years. And I think that one of the neatest things about my grandparents was, which we talk about, is, my grandpa Al was the salesman of the company. He had the relationships. He was the guy that people like to buy from, but Gertrude Lewin was the brains behind the business. She ran the books. She was all business, and it was in 1934. So just think about, that perspective of a woman leading a company in those days. And I think that there's tons of turning points over 85 years that define a business. But I think that the biggest thing I would say is just that each generation that took on the business was the turning point that the company needed at that time. And so, family business is not easy. It takes a lot of different skill sets to be in a family, let alone in a family business. And I think that when it went from, Gertrude and Alvin to Milton and Elaine, and then to me and Stephanie, which has all been through purchase. I mean, we're tough negotiators with each other. I think those have been the biggest turning points. And I think that, from a value standpoint, one of the things that we did around 2010 was we created core values that we felt, were reflective of the company and candidly our family. And so my leadership team, of which many of them are on this call, we sat around and we talked about the words that resonate with us, and basically ended up being history, enthusiastic, adaptive, reputable, and team-oriented, and it spells the word heart. So that is our core values, and that's really what we live by.
I love that. Can you say that again? Can you spell out heart for us again?
Sure. It's history, enthusiastic, adaptive, reputable, and team-oriented. So for us, they're really, I mean, they're candidly, they're hired, they're fired, they're, guided based on those concepts of, those core values. And, we always say, like, if you're here, it's because you understand them and you live them. And it's something that, our employees are candidly graded on. It's hard to grade on history, quite frankly, because it's not a test, but it is about the concept of the humble beginnings and understanding, that there's a past behind us.
Wow. I love that. One of the best I've ever heard, I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that has affected the atmosphere of the company? I hear a lot of talk about companies focusing on their company culture and their company atmosphere. So can you talk to us a little bit of, so now that you have those core values, how did it translate into the air, into what people are breathing inside the walls of the company?
I think that, going back in history, I mean, I'm just going to reference when we were growing up. I mean, everybody knew, kind of that worked at Hamilton Parker, what Milt Lewin was about. And I'm referencing him because that's, candidly when I was around the business most. But, the 70s and the 80s were not this, concept of building core values that you talk about openly. You just put your head down, you do your work, and that's how you build your reputation. And I think that for us, I remember when there was 8 employees at the company in 1980. But when you get to a point of 140 or 160 employees, or even 90 employees, you need to have some mantras or phrases that people will be able to connect with, because otherwise it's not something that's anchoring the company on a day-to-day basis. So that's our atmosphere, and we are a family atmosphere. And just like any family, we have good days and bad days. And just like any family, there are, conversations that ultimately make us what I would think to be as a stronger family. And that's what we're about. So the core values really helped sort of put a bow around the family atmosphere that started with my grandparents, carried under my mom and dad, and now under us.
Amazing. Unbelievable. So we have some young professionals on the call tonight, and I'm a believer. Of course, education is key. Education is everything. And as the director of the Kollel, we're pretty big on Jewish education, so we believe in education. But there's something else that is, I would say, the other side of the coin, which is what we'll call real life. The things that they didn't teach you in school, the professors didn't talk about it. It's not necessarily in the textbook, but you pick them up in real life. And now I want to transfer over to that segment, to that department. When you interview an employee, a potential employee, what are some things that you're looking for? What are some of the qualities that you want them to have? And if you're able to decipher, what are some of the things that you want to make sure that they don't have?
Well, first of all, if I ever interview anybody, HR gets immediately nervous because I just like to talk to people and learn about them. And, it's not, you don't want a scripted person. You want someone that can really, sit down and have a candid conversation about who they are, things along that line. Part of having the core values at our company is really about saying, and we've done it. I mean, bricklayers and garage door installers are not born, out of the womb that way. And so they get skills to do those jobs, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be a great culture fit for the company. And so the core values really helped put us in a place where we hire for culture. We want to make sure that they're a culture fit. There have been plenty of people that have certainly been wonderful, have wonderful skill sets that we may need, but if we don't see them as a culture fit, we don't hire them. And from an interview standpoint, one of my favorite questions, and I'll reference Bobby Schottenstein. He talked about this Sunday article that used to be in the New York Times, where they would interview CEOs, and I know exactly those articles, and I've got a notebook full of those articles talking about leadership that I've cut over the years. And one of my favorite questions that I ask someone when I'm meeting them is, to essentially tell me, if you get the job after 6 months, what would you say I'm going to say that's going to annoy me, and what is something that you would say you do that I'm going to say you're doing a great job. And I want them to be reflective and say, like, look, it's going to drive you nuts that after 6 months I'm this type of person. It doesn't mean hard worker. It means I might be a little gruff sometime, or I maybe don't have these XYZ skills, but I want them to be honest and reflective of just who they are, where they're good, where they're bad, so to speak, and where they need to work on things. But I like to put people out there to kind of be introspective on that.
And now let's go to step 2. Once they're in the company, what are some qualities, or what are things that you've seen that have enabled people to rise in their own company, whereas other people that just stay stagnant? Has there been a pattern that you've picked up on?
There has been. I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago, we talked about this concept of just continuous improvement. And we don't talk about it really anymore because we pretty much act on it all the time. But the epiphany for me that took place about people that are at Hamilton Parker versus people that are not at Hamilton Parker anymore is I saw someone who used to be at the company, candidly, when I was, either younger or just out of college, and they were no longer with the company. They had been gone, probably 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And they were the exact same person that left the business as they are today. And for me, I remember seeing that person, and I'm not saying they're not a good person. It's just a matter of, their growth. I think that we see that, like, there's no one in my company that I feel is the same person today as the day that they came into the building. I hope that they're better at their own skill sets or reflections on how they can be an advocate for the company. But if you leave, my opinion is that if you're there, you're constantly growing, and if you don't stay, that's part of the thing, is do you become stagnant on your own? And I think that's a big part of our culture. We're not going to be always this company that just has all the financial resources that people would want as an employee. We have our own budgets, we have our own qualifications, but there's a true family atmosphere, and I know that's why people stay. Candidly, going back to when my dad had the business, to new people today that have been there many years and are very happy.
Wow, very good. I love that. Always continuing, furthering, getting better. We don't stop. And that's a Jewish concept. We don't, I tell people that when they're new to Jewish learning, they're like, but I graduated school. I'm done with that. Hebrew school, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, I'm done. I thought, like, no. You're always gaining. And that's why even as a rabbi, I make sure that I have my own time, because I also want to further my knowledge. And it's like that as well in the workforce. Another area where Jewish learning and business meet, that a good employee is always trying to further their talents, their skills, their knowledge, their application of the knowledge, and all of that. So I could really appreciate that. Thank you. So now let's get to COVID-19. I believe there was an article a few months ago, I recall reading, where you talked a little bit about how COVID has affected your business. And I want to know if tonight you could share with us, I guess going back a drop less than a year ago, it was March or April, or where it started to really hit. how did you guys see it? When did you guys realize, oh boy, this is real? And how did you pivot? And then how do you see yourselves coming out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. There was a conversation at one point in our company, and I use the phrase conversation lightly, about the fact that COVID is not a flu, and that we can't sit here and act like this is just a flu and it's going to go away. And candidly, part of when we talk about mentors, I mean, I'm around a lot of really smart people and friends, and they worry maybe more than I do, and they made me realize that this is going to be really serious. And Christy Miller is on this call, and Christy has been with Hamilton Parker for 15 years. And right before 2020 started, I promoted her to president of the company because I knew that it would be coming around, and Christy would be better to handle and navigate what we needed than I would. But COVID was really serious, and it really comes down to being willing to protect your employees, to protect your customers, to listen to your employees about their concerns. There were definitely people that were for their own health reasons, or people in their own family's health reasons, that they needed to be more careful. We understood. There were people who didn't feel comfortable even coming into work, so we did our best to work with them. And I think that the other part is, as school restarted, I mean, we've got a lot of young families, and I mean, we know that there are people that are at home with their kids the majority of the day, and we may not be getting the most out of them, so to speak, as far as their own productivity. But what I think is neat about our culture is they're bothered by it too. I mean, not only do they not want to be with their kids all day, but they also are bothered by the fact that they can't do as much as they want to do because they care about the customers and the service. What I think is really the best reflection of what we've done as a company is, I think we did not have a single COVID case until, I believe, November. We had one in November. We had, I think, 2 or 3 in December. We've had, I want to say, 4 or so far this year, but it really kind of follows the spike of what's been going on nationally. But it's the second spike, it's not the first spike, and I think that says a lot about how aggressive we were. The biggest challenge from a business standpoint, and for anybody here who is doing a home project or things along that line, I mean, there's a lot of materials that they're just on back order. It's not just our products, it's everybody's products. And there's a lot of people that think it's going to take 4 weeks, and it's going to take 8 weeks. And it's no different than any really logistics situation with any product category. So that's probably our biggest challenge as a company, is because we want to please our customers, making sure they get what they want, but also being honest with them at the same time.
Wow. No, that and that sensitivity to people working as a father of 2 little ones, and it's challenges that we were forced to confront, and having this group and team effort that you said, the people in the office wanting to make it work, wherever and however it can. Really, I could say as a parent, is what has helped us kind of pull through these moments. I want to now ask about taking risks, and we all take risks, whether it's 0.001 or 0.05, right, or 5%. We all take risks. And in a company, I'm sure you're also confronted with risks all the time, maybe some a little, more high risk or low risk. Can you talk to us a little bit about what calculations do you take before taking the risk, or making sure that you avoid the risk?
Okay, well, I'm gonna start with a story referencing my dad, who in like 1981 or so, Irving Schottenstein, as we know, is his best friend. Irving called my dad and asked him where he should get tile for his house, because he was building a house in Bexley on Parkview. And my father, who was only in the brick business at the time, said, well, get your tile from me. And that was literally how he got into the tile business, was because Irving called him and needed tile. And, so I would not say that that's in the Harvard, business school of studies about how to start a business, but, that's a great example of sometimes what we do, I would say in our family, about how we take risks or how we do things. And, one thing I say, and everyone at my company knows it, is like, we're not in it always for the short term. We're in it for the long term. There's not a return on investment right away, but you have to be progressive with how you do things. I think that the generation before me were like that, and those take risks. $500 in 1934 to buy a bankrupt coal company was a risk. Getting into multiple businesses, which Milton did, was a risk. I've expanded with my team to Cincinnati and Cleveland and some other areas. These are all risks. Are they so risky that they're going to hurt the business permanently? I do not believe so. And but it's a process to get the business up and in every situation. So if you're in it for the long term, I think even in today's standards, there's a credibility in the market for that. Even in an Amazon world where it's very transactional and sometimes not even personal, you have to be willing to do things, especially if it's for the long term, because you just know it's the right thing. And I think it's just a combination of guts, not having them, but actually your gut feelings, the numbers, and what do we think that we can do, reflecting on where the world is overall in the market trend. So there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that we actually say this is why we're doing it. I think it's a combination of things, and I think when you think long term, it's a lot of different variables that come into play.
Thinking long-term instead of the short-term gains reminds me of this famous study. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, heard it, about the two children and the cookie and the marshmallow. They were told that you get one cookie now, but if you can wait 15 minutes, you get two cookies. And they followed up with these kids many years later, and they, seem to be much more successful in multiple areas of life. So it seems to be able to be focused on the long term. It seems to be a very dominating factor for success. So I could, and now we learn it as well in risk management and calculation. Before we open it up for any questions, I wanted to know if there's a young guy or gal on this call that's beginning their career, and they want to know, and if they were pretend that they're asking you, Adam, what is it that you wish you knew then but today? A takeaway message for all of them on this call.
Well, I had written some notes, because you were very gracious in giving me some of these thoughts, questions in advance. But when you were in your lesson and you talked about how Hashem, wants us to work hard, and the two things that I said I felt essential for, just as a takeaway message, is you got to have communication skills, which includes listening, and you have to have a good work ethic. And I think that you've got to, that's just everything that, my sisters and I were brought up on. You have to be willing to put the work in. It's not immediate, especially if you want to be a leader. If you want people to follow you, you have to be willing to put the work in. But you also have to be able to communicate. And I'm involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I have a little brother who's now 28. But when he was trying to find jobs, I always said to him, and he's an inner city kid, and he was just trying to find jobs, and he was working I think at a grocery store. And I said, you've got to ask your boss how you're doing. Ask him how you're doing. If you don't ask him how you're doing, then he's not going to think he has to tell you, except for in a review. But the other part is he's not going to realize that you actually care about how you're doing. And I think that is really important. But at the same time, you also need to make sure you have a boss or a leader that's able to communicate as well. I mean, it's not just about you as the employee. I mean, you should have an expectation that your boss or the person that's in charge of your own development is going to be able to communicate with you as well, and be a hard worker.
That is excellent. Very, very good. Sometimes it's hard to ask. It's hard to make those candid conversations happen, but I'm sure that they are, for those who have done it, I'm sure everyone could attest they are very fruitful in the long term. So thank you. So now I want to open it up for any questions from if anyone would like to ask. And if not, we could just close with an announcement next week's. But I definitely want to give anyone or everyone an opportunity. So anyone like to ask a question, please unmute yourself and fire away. Do we have any takers?
They all know me. I mean, they're all going to call me later.
Okay, well, with that, Adam, thank you very, very much from the Kollel and from all of us.
Wait, Rabbi, I have a question.
Okay,
oh, God.
Seth, go ahead.
We've only been friends for 50 years now.
So this is he's talking about family and business. So Adam, do you plan to groom any of your kids to take over the business?
You know, I mean, first of all, I'm just trying to groom them to clean their room and listen to their mother and I. So like, that's our focus, you know, right now. But, you know, I think that one of the challenges in family business is kind of this expectation that generations, automatically follow, or that there's an expectation that they're going to want to be in the business. And, I don't know. I mean, I want to groom. I mean, Stephanie and I talk about, we want to groom our kids to be just good people. And that's really all that we're focused on. And if they're passionate about it, they're certainly going to be welcome. And candidly, my nieces and nephews, the same way. But I mean, you got to be willing to work hard. You got to be willing to do the things that other people don't do. But of course, I would love to see the business, stay in the family. And if someone's passionate about it, then they'll get groomed accordingly.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And with that, we thank everyone for tuning in. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Next week, Parsha Buzz program week 6, featuring Audrey Tuckerman. I don't know if you know her, Adam, but Audrey.
Yeah, I do. What is it? Is that my Machatonin or my Mishpacha? She's my sister's sister-in-law. What is that?
Mishpacha, sort of, Mechutin, sort of, yeah, I guess so. Mechutin 2.0. Mechutin 2.0. So Audrey will be talking a little bit about wealth management and community and family, balancing and juggling all of that. So that's going to be a great program. And following that, we're going to have Skip Weiler of the Robert Weiler Company talk a little bit about the real estate industry. Some great speakers. And Scott Schiff talking about personal injury. If you, or God forbid yourself or someone you know is in an injury, what are some good things to know and how you could help them. So there's some great programs coming up. And I want to once again thank everyone for coming. And if you would like to stop by our home to have something for your table for Shabbat, please text me, preferably tonight or tomorrow morning. And of course, we could share with you something from our Shabbat table to your Shabbat table, the way that all of us in our community are sticking together as we pull through this pandemic. So once again, Adam, thank you for joining us. We could give Adam a virtual applause. Thank you so much.
A round of applause as well.
Round of applause. This was most enjoyable, and I learned things. I myself, took notes, and I'm going to listen to this recording a couple of times. I love the HEART acronym, and that's going to be applied to the Kollel quite quickly. They don't know what's
coming.
Thank you. So thank you all. Thank you all, everyone. Wishing all of you a Shabbat Shalom, and looking forward to seeing you all next time.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bye, Rabbi.